Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Carolyn Evans here. We seem to be having a small amount of technical difficulty. Could people just let me know if they can hear me speaking here? Wonderful, thank you. Good. Well, welcome along to this session. It's so wonderful to see so many people signing up, and I hope you all have a great time this afternoon, and thank you very much to the speakers who've come along to join us, and thank you particularly to Victoria and to the team from the Honours College who've just done a fantastic job. Could I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land? And of course, we're all meeting on different lands of different traditional owners from around the country. I'm here today on the land of the Kumameri Narangwal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So it's my great pleasure to welcome everybody and introduce this session tonight. I've been involved both as an applicant for various sorts of scholarships, and as I'll come back to in a moment, both a successful and a wonderfully unsuccessful applicant for various scholarships, and I've also sat on various panels at different times. There were just a few things that I wanted to share with you before we start getting into the details of some of the specific scholarships that people might be interested in. The first is that I think that the process of just thinking about it, turning up tonight, great thing to do, applying, going through the process is in and of itself a great thing to do, even if you're not successful. It's great to be successful. That's what we like putting on our CVs. That's the good thing. But the reality is there are a lot of knockbacks that are involved. There are lots of talented people out there. Judging these things is more an art than a science. And so we have to expect that there will be knockbacks as well as successes. But the process of doing this can be a really enriching one. And I've certainly spoken to many people, perhaps who've discovered that they haven't been awarded. For example, I was on the Rhodes panel for a number of years, and it's very disappointing at the end of that process. It's a long and somewhat difficult process to find that you're not been elected. But those people have said to me, it's still been such a terrific thing to do because it's forced me to think about my life, about my future, what I really want to do. It's forced me to think about what I'm good at and some of the areas that I might want to build on in my life. It's made me think about my vision and what I want to give back to this society. And it's also been often an interesting chance to meet up with other people who are applying and who are often also interesting and engaged and enthusiastic people. And if you get through to an interview stage for those scholarships that have interviews, it's a good chance to be interviewed by, to meet, to get to talk to some very interesting Australians who've had great careers. So I would encourage you to think of the application process, just even the thinking about applying, as in and of itself valuable, and of course even more wonderful if you can win a scholarship at the end of that. But you do need a bit of resilience in this process, and just remember that a lot of people who are absolutely terrific, successful people who've gone on to have great careers have applied for and been unsuccessful with scholarships. And if you really want to do something, do think about a plan B. Don't just set your heart on, I must be a Rhodes Scholar, I must go to Oxford, I have to be a Fulbright Scholar, and it must be to Harvard or whatever it might be. Really think, okay, in my life I want to make huge advances in theoretical physics, or I want to be a community doctor who's the best sort of doctor I could possibly be, well, whatever it might be. What are the different paths overseas or in Australia that might get me there? And a scholarship, of course, can be a terrific one for that. I would encourage you to think in all of these processes, both what you'd get out of being awarded the scholarship and what you bring to the table, what talents, what abilities, what background, what leadership skills, what vision, but also what you plan on giving. If you are successful, are you going to be the sort of person that the scholarship will be proud to say in 5, in 10, in 50 years' time, oh, that was one of ours, we helped that person on their life journey, and now look at all the people they've helped, now look at the difference they've made to this country or globally, to this community, to the way that we think about the world. And again, if you keep that focus, a focus on what is it that I want to give back, what is it that I can contribute, I think you can find the scholarship process a really rewarding one. Here at Griffith, we are trying to support you in that process. And again, let me thank Victoria and the team at the Honours College, because they've really started to ramp up that program in recent years, both for our current students, and of course we're also keen to support our alumni who might, and indeed our staff, who are a bit further down the track and who've applied for some of these scholarships. Your success is our success. It's fabulous for the university when we can talk about our great students, our great alumni who are heading off overseas, and you can help make connections and contacts which will be of benefit to you, but will also help people say, oh, that Griffith University, you know, it has some pretty amazing graduates, or their staff members are really fantastic people. So thank you to you all for taking the time out of, you know, what I know is a pretty strange period in our history, not just getting caught in the present, but thinking about the future. Best of luck with your applications, and I do hope tonight is useful and informative for you. Thanks.
So, thank you, Carolyn, for those informative responses, and they really do set a wonderful precedence for the discussion that we're going to have this afternoon. And a couple of things really, from my perspective of supporting people through this process, is really about what you learn through this journey. It doesn't matter whether you are successful or not successful. The richness in learning is just immense. It is transformative, and you're going to hear that mentioned by people for the rest of this evening's session. So again, what is the overview of the program for today? Just very briefly, there are 4 scholarships that we are presenting, and I stress these are just 4. There are many more scholarships, but these are probably 4 of the most significant ones for our Griffith community. It's just a taster of a session, so there are 20 minutes. So for each of those sessions, we will have someone from the actual program scholarship team who will present, and they will give about an 8-minute overview. That will be followed by one of our Griffith alumni community who have been recipients of the scholarship as well. And they're going to send and share their insights into the application process and also what it was like being one of those fellows or scholars. Each session is then followed by a chat session. And again, if you can upload your questions in the chat, Kim's going to process those questions and then feed them through, and I will ask the panelists those questions. Apologies, we might not get to every one of your questions, but certainly we will endeavour to cover them all, and if we need to, we will send some follow-up answers to those particular questions. But remember that you can also approach the scholarship teams themselves, and they certainly will answer your questions. They do have quite a number of webinars that are coming up, and again, I encourage you to focus on those webinars and attend. So this is really just a taster. For many people in our community, you don't necessarily understand what scholarship is for me. You know, which ones can I apply for, when, what's the process like? And so that's the purpose of this as the beginning of that journey for you. The final session is what makes a good application as well. So the last thing that I do want to say to you is that we are recording the session. It will be available later on. As you registered for the session, we do have your contact details, and so we will email you the link. So Griffith has a web page, which if you search prestigious scholarships, it will come up with information about this session, where the link to the session is, as well as some of the resources that we do have that are available. So I'm now going to hand over to our first presenter, who is Alex McLaurin from the Australian American Fulbright Commission.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that intro, Victoria, and thanks to Professor Evans and to the whole Griffith team for inviting us to present today. I'm really excited to be here. So I'll just give you a quick overview of the Fulbright Scholarships Program. You can see a little bit about us there, but essentially we're a bilateral exchange scholarships foundation between Australia and the United States, established via a treaty between the two countries, the first ever treaty between Australia and the US, as a matter of fact. And we've been giving out scholarships to Australian students, academics, researchers and professionals to study or conduct research in the United States for over 70 years now. There's a bit about our history, but I won't go into it. I would encourage anyone who's interested in applying to look up, actually know a bit about the origins of the program and what we're about. It was established following the Second World War, and it's got a great ethos of turning swords into plowshares. So the program is divided up into 4 categories of scholarship. We've got postgraduate scholarships, which I'll talk about in a moment, postdoctoral scholarships. So for anyone who's got their PhD in the past 5 years and would like to undertake postdoctoral research in the US for 3 to 10 months. We've also got scholar awards, so for academics at associate or full professor level or mid-career professionals, and they're to undertake 3 to 4 months of study anywhere in the US. And then there's the Distinguished Chair Scholarship, which is just one particular award's very prestigious, just for people who are researching agriculture and life sciences. So there's a bit for everyone at Griffith. Awards for alumni and faculty as well as students. So the postgraduate scholarship, they're for anyone who's looking at undertaking study in the US, so up to 2 years of an Australian master's program, or for graduate students who want to take a full 2-year master's degree, or they're for current PhD students who are looking to complete just a period of research in the US as a VSR. Or you can also undertake a full doctoral program in the US, although those awards are quite competitive. So postgraduates, in summary, just for Australian students who want to undertake a master's or do some PhD research in the US. Then we've got the Fulbright Future Scholarships, which are available in all categories. They were just introduced a couple of years ago, and they're extremely lucrative awards. They provide full tuition coverage or visiting researcher fees at any US institution. And you can nominate to be considered for these awards during the application simply by providing an impact statement that talks about how your proposed program of study or research will aim to give back to Australia or enrich the lives of everyday Australians. So the benefits, you get a monthly stipend, a travel allowance, an establishment allowance, and dependent allowances are also available in some awards. Like dollar-wise, the scholarships can be valued at anywhere from $40,000 to up to 10 times that amount, depending on tuition costs. But they are very generous with stipend and establishment and with the general category awards, we can also provide funding for up to 2 years with tuition. You also get health coverage up to $100,000 and access to these fantastic Fulbright networks in the US, networks of alumni, networks of scholars from other programs across the world. We also, a huge part of Fulbright is that we help facilitate your visa process, which can be quite complex with the United States. So we're with you all the way. It's a very, there's a lot of pastoral care involved in the Fulbright scholarship experience. So for eligibility and selection, it's important to know only Australian citizens can apply. And the applications, you can be a dual citizen, just not with the United States. So dual citizens of everywhere besides the United States, as well as Australian citizens, are eligible. So the applications are assessed, of course, on academic and professional excellence, but not limited to that. We're also looking for ambassadors, ambassadors for the program, ambassadors for Australia. So people who are going to be a really good representative of the country and of the Fulbright brand. We're also looking for adaptability, so people who can adapt to new environments, of course, because it's a cultural exchange program. And your application is going to be assessed on its relevance to the United States, essentially. So why does your research or study need to be conducted in the United States? We're also looking at outcomes, particularly for that future program I mentioned earlier. So research or study that's going to result in significant impact or benefits. There's no age limit, and it's open to any field, and you can propose any US institution for your study or research. And that includes government institutions, non-profits, There's a whole range of places that you can propose to study or research in the United States. So the application process, there are a couple of main components. The project proposal is one of the most important. That's where you talk about what kind of research or study you'd like to do in the United States. Then you've got a personal statement, which is your opportunity to talk about your personal reasons behind your academic or professional trajectory. We require a minimum of 2, but I recommend 3 referee reports that are completed online. And importantly, for anyone who's looking at doing research rather than study, you do need a host institution letter of support. So you need to have contacted a potential host in the United States and established a relationship and received a letter from them stating that that they're happy to host you for research. So that's for the postdoctoral scholars, that's for the professional and senior scholars, and for postgraduate applicants who are looking to do PhD research. All need a letter of invitation from a host institution, but the master's students obviously don't need a letter. You also need copies of your academic transcripts. So the timeline, applications are open right now. They're open in February every year, and they close in July every year. This year it's July 6th. So just submit your application online by July 6th. Then selected applicants will be interviewed in August or September, and you'll receive notification of the outcome by the end of the year. Then we have this fantastic orientation and gala dinner at Parliament House in Canberra. And note that when you apply for a Fulbright, you must commence your program between July and June of the following year. So applicants this year must commence in July of 2021, but before June of 2022. So the website is the best place to start. There's lots of great tips and eligibility information. You'll see the whole range of the catalogue of awards there, and you can apply for as many as you'd like within each category. So I'd recommend you jumping on there. We've got some great webinars up there that go into this information in a little bit more detail. So I'd encourage you to log on to fulbright.org.au and check out some of that info. And now, as Victoria mentioned, we've got some fantastic Griffith University affiliated Fulbright scholars who we've invited to come along today and talk a little bit about their proposed projects and their experience with the application. So we've got Professor Bridie Lee Bartlett, who is a Fulbright Scholar Award recipient, and we've got Josh Russell, who is a Fulbright Future Scholar. And I might just invite Professor Bartlett first to just talk a little bit about what she's proposing to do on her Fulbright scholarship, and then her experience with the Fulbright application, if that's okay.
Thanks very much, Alex, and I hope everyone can hear me. It's fantastic to see you all online, and a very good afternoon to you. For a start, good on you for being here and considering applying for a Fulbright. For me, it's a kind of interesting point in my Fulbright journey because I was due to be heading to New York City in August this year, and if you've watched the news lately, you'll realise what's happening in New York at the moment. So my time is going to have to move to 2021. But when it does eventually happen, I'm really delighted to be going to NYU, where I'm going to be engaging in an amazing program researching how music can bring about positive social change and address social disadvantage. So I can only really speak about this particular point in my journey where I've been through the application process, I've been through the interview, I've gone to the beautiful gala dinner and had the orientation. And I thought I might just share 5 quick tips which I've thought about as I've reflected on the application process that might be useful to you where you're at right now. The first tip is to get to know the Fulbright scheme. Get to know who Senator Fulbright was, what he stood for, get to know what the vision and the mission of the Fulbright program is and why it exists, and Alex gave us a good heads up there for what to look for. I think like anything you apply for in life, you might be the brightest person with the best project, but if it doesn't align with the scheme that you're applying for, you're not going to go far. So that's the first thing, do your homework. The second tip is to find another Fulbrighter. Ask them about their advice, ask them about their experiences, ask them if you can have a sneak peek at their application. Of course, their application is going to be very different to yours and you don't want to try and replicate it, but it'll give you a good sense of what the scope and the scale and the tone and the promise of what a successful application looks like. And then give them your draft application to look at. That was an incredibly useful process for me. My third tip is don't be afraid to be audacious. What I mean by that is when developing your project and contacting your possible hosts and mapping out your time in the US, don't be afraid to be daring and bold. At every step in my application, I was sort of feeling like what I was proposing was really outrageous. And I kept thinking, who am I to think I can do this? And who am I to think I can go to New York City? And who am I to think I could go to NYU? But when I was at the gala dinner, somebody in one of the speeches said something that really nailed it for me. They said Fulbrighters have to be audacious in their ideas. So I encourage you to dream big, to have courage, and to believe in yourself when you're writing this application. My fourth tip is if you do make it to the interview, make sure you do a mock interview beforehand if you can. But realize that the questions will always be different. No two interviews are going to be the same. However, there is one thing that you're really likely to be asked, and that is for your elevator pitch. So my advice is walk in that door, ready to nail it in less than 30 seconds. And that's something that you have to prepare and practice. And then lastly, before I finish, at the orientation I went to in Canberra, which was just this most incredible, inspiring and beautiful event run by the amazing Fulbright team, I came to understand that Fulbrighters seem to have this really magic combination of fierce intellect, of deep humility, of intense purpose, of dutiful responsibility, and this distinct capacity to be able to talk to anybody and everybody about their topic and their field. And I'm pretty confident that all of you as fellow Griffith colleagues, you have that capacity in all of you too. So I hope these few quick tips might be useful to you in your Fulbright journey, and I really encourage you to give it a go, even if it's a couple of goes. And I'm more than happy to chat more in the Q&A time that's about to follow. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Josh to tell you a bit about his experiences and his advice too.
Thank you very much, Bridie. That was some great advice. Yes, I'm Joshua Russell, and I'm a Fulbright Future Scholar, and I'll be heading to the US to complete my Master's and PhD in Computer Science. And my research is focused on using artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to make biomedical imaging, I guess, more accessible to the majority of medical practitioners. And so I've now found out that I'm heading to the University of Massachusetts, and so I guess I'd like to share some advice on how I prepared for applying for this scholarship. So originally I was very focused on gathering research experience, and so Griffith has some incredible opportunities for this in the Griffith Honours College research bursaries, which are available on in winter and summer holidays, and they're a great introduction to research and also to getting to know professors who you can later call upon for your references in this application. And another wonderful, I guess, opportunity that's provided to you at Griffith is that most degree programs offer a work integrated learning program in the final year of your degree. And so you can use this for gathering additional research experience and further connections that, well, that was a key component to how I guess, pitched my application for the Fulbright Future Scholarship. And so I was very research focused in, I guess, the middle of my undergraduate studies, and I applied for the New Colombo Plan Scholarship. However, I was unfortunately unsuccessful with that application. And so after discussing it with Victoria, I guess the big gap in my my application was that I didn't have the ambassadorial qualities that they were looking for, say experience in leadership roles or community engagement. And so as someone in a technical degree, I hadn't really thought of this as being important, but as I guess looked further into the Fulbright scholarship and other scholarships, this is, I guess, just as critical as your, I guess, research experience. So there's thousands of ways in which you can get these ambassadorial skills and qualities. And so the way in which I approached it was by founding a artificial intelligence club at Griffith. So I guess one thing to mention about the application process, to follow up about what Bridie says, is that it's very, I guess, important to do a mock interview or practice interview. And so fortunately, Victoria set one up for me. And I learned very well is that you should not, I guess, try and memorize or prepare specific answers to certain questions, since, as Bridie said, there'll always be different questions, and I learned that by memorizing things, you're not yourself, you're not present in the moment. So I guess what I found is a great way to prepare is just to think about all the ideas and thoughts related to your application, related to your proposed research program, how you represent Australia in America. And by, I guess, assimilating your ideas and your thoughts, you can just be present in the moment and be yourself. So yeah, there's some the tips that I'd like to share. So I think we'll go on to the Q&A session now.
Thank you, Josh. That was great insights. Bridie and Alex, they were really fabulous and very, very different perspectives. We do have quite a number of questions, but obviously we've hit 5 o'clock, which is the end of our time. But what I would like to do is just perhaps to ask one or two, and then I will ask Alex, Josh and Bridie if you'd be prepared perhaps to do a bit of a written response to some of their questions later on. So the first thing that we have a question is there a minimum number of credit points you have to apply for a postgraduate program? For example, do you have to have completed a year of study before applying?
Hey,
Alex?
that's a great question. Sorry, that's a great question. And no minimum number of credit points required. You just need to have your undergraduate degree. So you can apply mid-degree, but as long as you have your degree by the time you're proposing to travel to study, then that's adequate.
Great. Okay, so the next question is, we've got some from staff, and one question from a staff member is that if they've already had a Fulbright fellowship, however it was 15 years ago, can you apply again? Absolutely.
Yep. The only restriction on repeat Fulbright awards is there's a 2-year rule between Fulbright awards. So once that time period has passed, you can reapply.
Okay, so one final question, which is from a postdoctoral researcher, and their question is, do you have to be employed as a postdoctoral researcher to apply for this scholarship, brackets the postdoc category, or can you apply for it after your PhD even though you may not be employed?
Yeah, a fantastic question. And no, you do not need to be employed as a postdoctoral researcher. All that's required is for you to have your PhD within the last 5 years. It can be 6 years under particular circumstances, extenuating circumstances, but ideally yet within the past 5 years.
Okay, many thanks for that session and response to the questions. Alex, I will follow up with you with a few of the other questions if you don't mind later, and then we'll share on our webpage as well those answers. So thank you everyone again, and now I would like to move on to the next session, which is the Rhodes session. So I welcome to the Rhodes session Professor Stan Hearn. Thank you, Stan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
My audio, my mic is okay. Is it not too soft? Excellent. Well, thanks very much for that, and thanks for inviting me along. My name is Stan Hearn. I'm the State Secretary of the Queensland Rhodes Scholarship. I'm currently a Professor of Econometrics at Queensland University of Technology, and I've just taken over as State Secretary from Professor Ben White, who was in the role for 5 years prior to that. So I'm learning by doing at the moment. So what I'm going to do today is I'll just chat very briefly about key contacts for the Rhodes Scholarship, the background and eligibility. We'll talk a little bit about the selection criteria and the selection process, which, as you can imagine, is currently a matter for debate given the rather interesting circumstances. Then I'll hand over to Beth Hamilton, who is one of the Griffith Rhodes Scholars from recent years. Okay, so there are a couple of key contacts for the Rhodes Scholarship in Queensland. The first of these is your network advisor at Griffith University, who's Professor David Elwood. So he should be your first point of call if you have any questions about your application or about your eligibility. And what he will do is escalate to me any questions which he thinks need escalating, and I in turn will escalate any questions that I can't deal with to the National Secretary, who's Professor Peter Konofsky, who's at ANU. We also have a state administrator, who's Sonia Betros, who's housed at QUT, but you can contact us through the email which you see there, the Rhodes Queensland@qut.edu email. There is also a web page which currently needs a little bit of updating, but you can get access to this web page, the URL that you see on the bottom of the screen there. Okay, well, the Rhodes is the oldest and probably most prestigious scholarship in the world. It was established in 1903 by the will of Cecil Rhodes. Each year there are 9 Australian Rhodes Scholars, 1 for each state and territory, and 3 from the whole of Australia, which are known as Australia at Large scholarships. And in recent years, Queensland has had a great record in providing Australia at Large scholarships. So essentially what happens is we elect a Queensland scholar, and if we think that the runner-up or even the second runner-up was close enough, we send them down to the Australia at Large scholarship. And there is a community of nearly 8,000 Rhodes Scholars worldwide, and given the improvements in digital communication as we're seeing now, this community of scholars is becoming incredibly vibrant. So Nick Salmon is the current Rhodes Scholar. He's going to be going to Oxford to do engineering, and we also were successful in ensnaring one of the Australian at Large scholarships, and that Sophie Ryan is going to Oxford to do law. 2 of your alumni who have been successful recently, 2012 Australia at Large Rhodes Scholar was Lauren Dancer, and more recently Beth Hamilton, who will be chatting to you a little bit later. Okay, so these eligibility criteria have changed, and they currently actually still in the process of being changed. They're still under negotiation. We still have to run all of these past Rhodes House and get final approval. But what we've been trying to do is expand the scope of eligibility for the scholarship. So at the moment, if you are an Australian citizen or permanent resident, so permanent resident has been added, and have been a resident in Australia for at least 5 of the last 10 years, you're eligible. You must have completed at least an Australian bachelor's degree or be completing it by the 30th of June 2021. Now, they're quite strict age requirements, so you have to have reached your 18th but not past your 25th birthday on the 1st of October 2020. But there is another category which, if your first bachelor's degree was awarded on or after the 1st of July 2019, you may apply if you've not passed your 27th birthday. So that little addition there was kind of thought of to try and accommodate people who had an interrupted career path in getting to their first degree. Also note that you are not allowed to apply for a Rhodes Scholarship on more than 2 occasions. Okay, so what are the selection criteria? Well, the most important is academic excellence, an indicative expectation of GPA of at least 6.75 out of 7, or a weighted average mark of at least 80% or equivalent. You should also look very carefully at the entry requirements for your proposed course at Oxford. The entry requirements for Oxford are becoming more and more stringent, so you really need to check that you meet the requirements for your proposed course. And one thing I should emphasize is that although we elect a scholar, the scholarship is not confirmed until you have been accepted by an Oxford college. So it's really important to make sure that you meet the entry requirements. Rhodes's will was all about really trying to identify people who were incredibly energetic and who had the drive to use that energy. He was also worried about leadership, moral force of character, and also a sense of duty as evidenced by service to the community. And so what we look for in electing scholars are people that have a sustained track record of service to the community. So it's a big ask, but the rewards are very, very large. Okay, applications submitted through an online system at that URL, and that's the only way that you apply, through the online system. Applications will open on the 1st of July 2020, and they will close on the 11th of September. Okay, so we're in a little bit of a difficult situation at the moment. As you can imagine, various parts of the world are in different stages of the COVID lockdown. It seems as though in Australia we're doing relatively well, but Rhodes House has determined, I believe, that if any of the areas that elect Rhodes scholars have to do the selection process online, then all jurisdictions of the Rhodes will have to do selection of the scholar online. So that's something which we'll keep you informed about, and I suggest you try and join the webinar, which will be held sometime in June, where this will be a little bit more clear. You also have to apply for the Rhodes in a state or territory, presumably Queensland, if that's where you are. The current advice is that if you qualify for more than one jurisdiction, you should choose the jurisdiction that you feel most attached to. You need to provide a curriculum vitae and also a personal statement, which should be your own work. You also need 5 referees, 3 academic and 2 others. And when you're choosing your referees, try to make sure that you actually know the people that you ask, although close family members obviously shouldn't really be asked. Okay, so the stipend the scholarship is incredibly generous. You have a stipend as well as all fees being covered. You have private health insurance. The flights to and from Oxford are covered. But note that you cannot defer the scholarship, and it cannot be held with any other. And also you will be expected to engage with your fellow scholars through the Rhodes network after you've left Oxford. And that's something which is, as I mentioned earlier, becoming really, really important in the Rhodes community. Okay, so there are a couple of FAQs there, but I think it's probably better if I just skip those and wait for any questions that you might want to pose in the Q&A section, and just hand over to Beth, who I'm sure you're keen to hear from, given that she was a Griffith Rhodes Scholar. Thanks very much.
Sorry, microphone. Hi everyone, I'm joining you from Oxford. Nice to meet you all. What I thought I'd do is just briefly introduce myself, run through some key points, tell you a little bit about my Oxford experience so far, and then I have a bit of a more detailed slide that I might not have time to go through, but happy to follow up individually at the end of the presentation. So I studied the joint medical science medical degree at Griffith University on the Gold Coast from 2011 to 2016. I loved my time at Griffith, played lots of sports, was quite involved in Hope for Health and Ubuntu through Health. I enjoyed my time in the Honours College and just, enjoyed kind of living by the beach and, going for a surf before university every day. I then moved up to Townsville to do my internship, and that's where I spent 1.5 years before moving over to Oxford here to commence my Rhodes Scholarship. Okay, so some of my kind of key points for applying for the Rhodes. Firstly, start early, which you're all doing by attending this session, so well done. It is quite a lengthy process and it takes a lot of things, telephone calls, emails. So starting early and being over-prepared is a good place to start. My second point kind of echoes what Professor Evans alluded to earlier in the presentation. This is really kind of a great opportunity to take some time out and reflect on what motivates you, what you want to contribute, and kind of who has shaped who you are. So regardless of if the process is successful or not, I found the whole process to be a really valuable learning opportunity. My third point is reach out for help. There's lots of help around, as you can see. So Professor Sternhern seems like a good starting point. I know Professor David Elwood, who is the contact at Griffith, quite well, and I know he would be willing to help you. I'm here to help as well. So you're not in this alone, and reach out for help. My fourth point is be creative. So do some brainstorming, make some mind maps, talk to people who know you really well, who might know you through kind of different areas of your life. And my fifth point, this sounds a bit lame, but I think the process of applying for these kind of prestigious scholarships can be quite daunting and make you feel quite vulnerable. I know that I had it stuck in my head that I never really would kind of stand a chance to get this kind of scholarship. Even the night before my interview, I was, kind of an inconsolable mess of nerves. So I think believing in yourself and backing yourself is really important. And also finding someone who can give you that when that might waver. So I had a professor who I knew very well through medical school and worked with in a GP surgery one-on-one for a year. And he was probably my kind of mentor who guided me through the process and was kind of always there to support me when I needed it. So just a little bit of, a few photos about my time in Oxford so far. So my first year here, I studied a Master's in Global Health Science and Epidemiology. That was in a class of about 25 people from 10 to 12 countries around the world. and we learnt all about the global burden of disease and how to appraise and perform meaningful research. Just aware of the time here. But these photos kind of touch on a few aspects of Oxford so far. Some of the highlights are probably meeting people from different walks of life from all over the world who, you know, have values and beliefs that are so different from my own, but I've learnt a lot from them and I've made some lifelong friendships. I've gone rowing in the snow. I've started to play Aussie rules here. I've studied in some beautiful libraries. That top right picture in the snow is the Radcliffe Camera, which is one of the libraries I often study in. After the Masters in Global Health Science, I've now proceeded on to do a PhD in population health, looking at hepatitis B infection. And these are some points about the process. I think Professor Hearn has kind of touched on most of these, so I won't go through them in detail, but just 2 points I wanted to highlight is regarding your personal statement. This is a really important part of the Rhodes application. It's a chance to kind of tell your own story, tell the Rhodes panel who you are and how you want to contribute. This is not the place to simply repeat what's on your CV. So particularly kind of the academic hurdle, you don't need to kind of touch on that in detail again in your personal statement. So that would be one tip from me. And my second tip would be to keep those 4 areas, academic excellence, extracurricular talents, community service and leadership in the forefront of your mind. So maybe even make like, you know, a mind map with those 4 areas and write down what from you can kind of apply to those 4 areas and try and mold them through both your CV and your personal statement. I think I'll leave it there because I've run over time. Thank you. Okay, this is my email address. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Beth. And thanks, Dan. So a few questions have come through. And the first is, as an Australian medical practitioner, is there a limit on the time you can spend interning overseas to be able to retain a medical license in Australia? If so, how has this influenced your scholarship experience? That's obviously directed to you, Beth.
So I completed my internship in full before I came to Oxford, so that didn't apply to me. I came over here halfway through my second year, so my residency year. But I do know several people who have done the scholarship in that boat. It seems like it's a bit of a case-by-case basis, and I would recommend getting in contact with APRA to check that. But my overall message is that they do seem to be quite accommodating, but I would check that. I know people who've had to go back halfway through their degree in Oxford to complete their internship so that they maintain their license.
Okay. And we have another question which is about medical rotations. So is it possible to do the 4th year elective medical rotation at Oxford under a Rhodes scholarship, or is the scholarship only offered for full courses at Oxford?
The scholarship's only offered for full courses in Oxford.
Okay. So I'll move on to another question then. This is one for you, Stan. I just wanted to clarify that there are no exceptions regarding the age limit for the next application run. I turn 28 next month, but it took 4 years to get access to university education, which is why I graduated much older to my peers. Is there no way around this?
Okay, so the age limits are pretty strict, I have to say. We have to draw the line somewhere, and they're always going to be heartbreaking cases just on the other side of the line. All I could suggest is that if Kimberly wanted to send a case to me, I could pass it on to the National Secretary for a ruling on eligibility, but I'd have to say I think that the chances would be slim. The age limit is treated pretty rigorously.
Okay, so last question before we move on to the next program. If you were doing a PhD project, would you be able to collect data outside of England?
Absolutely. Beth's answered that one as well. There's no problem with that.
Well, then I'll say thank you very much, Beth. And Stan, that's been another fabulous session. So we'll move on to Alexandra. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Victoria. Can I just quickly check if my audio is coming through all right? If anyone could just...
It's great. Thank you.
Chat. Yep, perfect. Good, good. Well, again, thank you to Victoria and all of the wonderful team at Griffith for organising this session today, and thank you to everyone who's been able to join us. It's fantastic to have so many people on the line, and also it shows a great interest in these great opportunities and scholarships that are available to you all. So if I can give any sort of general advice, I would say just to sort of take in as much as possible. There's lots to learn about yourself and your goals and ambitions through any one of these great opportunities. So take the opportunities that come to you in terms of feedback and enjoy it as much as possible. So I guess a bit of background about our scholarships, the John Monash scholarships. We're a foundation that were founded in 2001 and awarded our first cohort of scholars in 2004. And as of our most recent cohort in 2020, we now have 202 scholars to date, who are all leaders from a diverse range of disciplines and fields and industries, and doing wonderful and impactful work across a variety of fields and disciplines for the benefit of Australia. So I guess in essence, to sort of try and sum up how we select our scholarships, we're looking to select leaders who want to take postgrad study overseas with the support of our scholarship. And it's important to keep in mind that we're the John Monash Foundation, so obviously our scholarships are named for General Sir John Monash. So similar to any other scholarship you're looking into, it's always worthwhile looking into the namesake of the foundation and the funding body, because we're looking to select scholars who, I guess, are living out their impactful pursuits as leaders in their various endeavours in a similar vein of General Sir John Monash. So what makes us a bit more, I suppose, what makes us unique as a scholarship compared to others that are available? We have these sort of three main criteria, I suppose, that make us stand out. Firstly, that we're open to all fields of endeavour. You can come from any academic background. We're not restricted by age, your career stage, or the institution that you would like to study at overseas, as long as you're able to be clear on why it is the best place in the world for you to be. These unique criteria have resulted in a very unique alumni community, and we now have scholars, as I mentioned just before, that are working, collaborating and leading impact across all aspects of Australian society and globally, from medicine, engineering, social entrepreneurship, education, policy, a whole range of legal disciplines, policy, I think I've already said that one, arts, music, just to name a few. The list goes on. So I very much encourage you to have a look at our website, and you can find the bios of all of our scholars listed online, and it's always good to familiarise yourself with previous recipients. So if you're interested in applying for our scholarship, it's worthwhile keeping in mind our eligibility requirements. So we do require that all applicants meet these three eligibility criteria. Firstly, having Australian citizenship. You can hold dual citizenship, just have to have Australian citizenship. You need to have completed or be about to complete, or in essence, I suppose you will have completed a degree from an Australian institution by the time you take up your postgraduate study overseas. You need to have that degree from an Australian institution. It can be an undergraduate degree or a postgraduate degree. You just need to have at some stage completed a full degree in Australia. And we note that you need to have results that indicate you will get into your proposed study overseas. So we don't have a GPA requirement of our applicants, but we do require that you're able to evidence that you'll meet the entry criteria for the degree that you'd like to complete overseas. So very much encourage that you look into what those criteria are and do your best to evidence them in your application. And lastly, you need to plan to start a postgrad degree at an overseas institution the year after having applied and being selected. So very similar to the other scholarships you've heard about today. That means if you're applying this year in 2020, that's for study that will be commencing at some stage in 2021. And our key selection criteria, just at the top there, what we're looking for, broadly speaking, is excellence within your field, demonstrated leadership ability or potential leadership, and a vision that will be of benefit to Australia, and a study proposal and career plan that evidences how you plan on achieving this vision. So the scholarship itself is a set stipend of 70,000 Australian dollars per year for up to 3 years. The up to 3 years is referring to the length of your postgraduate degree, so it will depend on how long your degree is at a full-time study load, noting that we cap our funding at 3 years. So if you plan on completing a PhD overseas, you'll be eligible for that 3 years of funding, even if the PhD exceeds 3 years in length. If you're undertaking a master's degree that goes for 10 to 12 months, that's a 1-year degree, eligible for only 1 year of funding. A 2-year degree, most likely a 2-year master's. Just noting that you can't elect to complete a master's degree that goes for 1 year part-time and apply for 2 years of funding. You can complete it over 2 years if that's your choice, but you're only eligible for the funding measured at the full-time study load. This funding can be used for your tuition in the first instance, and then if there's funding left over, it can also be used for living expenses, insurance, and any other expenses in support of your studies overseas. Scholars are encouraged and supported with seeking additional sources of income in the case they have additional expenses to cover, which will be quite common depending on where you're planning on studying. I'll only note that it's not possible to hold the John Monash scholarship concurrently with a Rhodes or a Fulbright. You can hold the scholarship concurrently with funding direct from the institution of study, so an additional scholarship from your college at Oxford, for example, or if you were studying in America and you also got offered funding from the American Australian Association for small grants and bursaries from Rotary, those sorts of funding types are fine to hold concurrently to cover additional expenses. But any queries on those sorts of things, happy to go into more detail in an email. Of course, outside of the financial aspect of the scholarship, you also have access to the Foundation's network of alumni and extended community. And that sort of goes on to that final point there of lifelong support, mentoring, and opportunities for collaboration and professional development. Lastly, we do have a couple of affiliate agreements with a few institutions overseas, and if you're particularly interested in King's College, IE, or Cranfield, I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions about the additional support available for John Monash scholars that choose to study there. So a little on the application and selection process. So our applications actually open online this Friday on the 1st of May, which is very exciting. And after they open online, they're open for 2.5 months until the 14th of July. So these applications are made available through an online portal, which can be accessed as of Friday on our website. And the details for our website are on the final slide, but you can always find them as well through your university, or just if you search for John Monash Foundation. But essentially, you'll have to complete an application online to be considered for the coming round of scholarships. And it's quite a lengthy process that I'll let Emma and Catherine elaborate on in terms of their experiences as scholars going through it. But I guess in essence, the online application is open for 2.5 months for a reason, and I encourage you to take the time to, as soon as you're able to, after May 1, if you're interested in applying, to go on, follow the link on our website, create a login to the application so that then you can get a sense for all of the content and start considering your responses, as well as who you might like to list as your referees. I'll get into the online application in a little bit more detail, but I'll just quickly run through that after the application's closed, we go through an online shortlisting process for the first round of interviews, which are held around the country, as well as by video conference between mid-August to roughly the end of September. All the dates for the panels will be listed on the applications page of our website. And I will note that there may be some changes to the way we run our interview process as required to account for any COVID-19 restrictions that may be ongoing in August, September, and potentially for our national round as well, which will be held in mid to late October. Usually we hold those interviews over 2 days in Melbourne, 2 days in Sydney, and as much as possible all in person. But again, we'll make changes as required and update our applicants as we go. And then finally, the scholarships are generally awarded in late October or early November. But firstly, just looking at the online application, which as mentioned opens very soon on the 1st of May and can be accessed by our website. Once you've made an account, and you can go onto that account at any stage and work on it, and then log out, go back in. It's there for you to sort of access at your leisure. Essentially, what's required is you'll have a dashboard with a variety of tabs that sort of resemble titles such as you see here on the screen. General information, where you'll list things such as the course you plan on doing, a backup option or a third option if you've got it, your proof of citizenship, when you plan on starting, a budget for your study, that kind of thing. There's a section for your postgraduate study proposal, a proposed benefit to Australia statement, academic summary, work experience, leadership engagement and impact, and then your referee request sections. So I will say that we do require 3 referees. They can be any combination of personal, professional and academic. And obviously, as we have a greatly diverse range of people applying in terms of age and career stage, the combination of more academic or more professional will vary depending on where people are at in their career, and there's no issues with that at all. I guess one bit of advice from myself at the administrative end of the process, I would really encourage you to look at these tabs on the dashboard as they appear to you as opportunities to pull together a sort of an entire narrative about yourself. So essentially a story about that's explaining who you are, what's the impact you're passionate about, why it's so important to Australia, how you plan on leading and driving this impact, starting with your proposed study overseas, why it needs to be undertaken overseas, and then I guess how you're going to continue pushing for this impact in the short, medium and long term. So very much encourage you to think about how all these various sections are going to help explain this narrative clearly to your online assessors. So I think I've managed to nearly keep that to 8 minutes, not too sure, hopefully, but I'll, at this point I want to hand over to 2 of our lovely scholars from Griffith University. I'll just quickly note that we actually have had 4 scholars to date who have studied at Griffith prior to being awarded their John Monash Scholarship. Today on the line we've got Emma Dale, who is a 2018 John Monash Scholar, completing her studies in Oxford. She is back in Hobart, I believe, at the moment. And then we've got Dr. Catherine Rock, who's actually a 2004 John Monash Scholar, who is here in Queensland. So it's wonderful to have both a scholar from our 2004 cohort, our first cohort of scholars, as well as Emma from 2018, who's still studying. So I think I'll pass over to Catherine first, if that's all right, and then perhaps Emma can go after that, and then happy to ask any questions that anyone has about the process. And I'll also have my email on the last screen if anyone would like to reach out directly.
Thanks, Alexandra. Thanks for that. I guess, yeah, as Alexandra mentioned, I'm one of the first 8 who went through in that first year in 2004. So I'll probably leave it up to Emma to kind of do a bit of a deeper dive into this selection process. But I just wanted to give you an overview of what Alexandra really means about lifelong support, because I really want to emphasise that point that a John Monash Scholarship really is for life, and it's not just for the time that you're doing the degree. To give you a quick overview, in 2003 I finished my undergraduate degree at Griffith Uni at Nathan, and that was a dual degree in microelectronics engineering and information technology. I was one of the first 8 who was selected. My John Monash Scholarship was supported by Boeing, and I went to the University of Oxford and Brasenose College. And my PhD was in image processing and machine learning for feature detection in medical images. All seems like a long time ago now, but it was a fantastic experience. And even from that very early stage of the foundation and the scholarships, there really was a lot of support while I was over in the UK. Two key functions that I remember where I had an invite due to the John Monash Scholar Network were the Buckingham Palace Garden Party and the 2005 Ashes reception at Australia House. So they were fantastic events to attend. Since returning, the Foundation and the Alumni Network really did play a key role in facilitating where I went next with my career. It was actually, I've ended up in intellectual property. I'm a patent attorney, and it was actually through an introduction from the John Monash CEO of the time, which led to another introduction, which got me into this industry. So I've been in intellectual property about 9 years now, and in fact 2 years ago I went back to the UK to the University of Cambridge to complete an MBA. And really that's when I hooked up with the John Monash Scholar Network over there in the UK again. And you know, one of the events they held over there was UK wide. Everybody came to Cambridge for a picnic and punting in the rain, obviously, because it was the UK. But it just really shows that you know, you continue to be part of this network wherever you end up in the world after you've finished. Also back here in Queensland, I still have a lot of engagement with the foundation, the scholars and the extended community. For a few years I sat on the Queensland selection panel, and I am involved with shortlisting every year, and hopefully again this year. There are local alumni networks even in Queensland. The next one was earmarked for June this year at the Queensland Club, but I guess we'll be seeing what happens with COVID before that happens. There's a biannual global symposium for scholars and alumni. This has previously been in Brussels, Oxford, New York, and earlier this year was in Melbourne. And most recently, in February, I was invited to the Queensland Governor's House as to represent the foundation at their Vice-Regal Patronages luncheon, which was absolutely delightful and great to meet some of the local Queensland arts and humanities community. So as you can see, the scholarships, they're really not just about completing your studies and you know, then you're done and dusted. They really do involve joining a whole community of scholars, alumni, members and friends of the foundation, you know, which do provide that lifelong support, mentoring, professional development for life, really. So I'll hand over to Emma to kind of, she can give you a more current perspective, I guess, of the selection process and the scholar experience.
Yep, hello. Yep, hi guys, thank you for that. Yep, I'm Emma and I am currently in the midst of a DPhil at Oxford and currently retreated back to Tasmania after getting COVID. So I wanted to start with an overarching kind of point that you should really enjoy this. I really enjoyed my application round and selection with the Monash community. It's obviously quite a daunting experience and quite hard. But when else do you get a chance to really think about and create a vision for Australia and talk about your passions with a group of experts? And that's what the selection panels really are about, is you going and pitching your vision for Australia to a panel of really amazing people. And I also want to say at this point that if you don't get it the first round, I would really encourage you to try again. I didn't get my scholarship on the first round, and I got a lot of great feedback from and the foundation that really helped me feel more confident and relaxed in my second interview round, in which I was successful, which was great. And then kind of playing on that vision concept, a big part of the Monash Foundation is that you are aspiring to be a leader in Australia, and that you have a clear focused vision of where you'd like Australia to be in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So you should really put that vision before your university. So don't pick a university and try and shove your vision into it to make it fit. Really think about what place can I go that will catapult me in the right direction, but for this vision. In picking your university to fit your vision, I would really recommend asking around at Griffith or wherever you're studying now, if you're studying somewhere else now, where they think in your field is the best place to go. And I would really encourage you to look outside the traditional UK and US schools, because there are some really amazing schools throughout the world, especially in Europe, has some amazing programs, especially for taught masters. Obviously, as Alex said, you have to have a backup university, but I would even recommend having 2 or 3 or even 4 different backup universities where you could go, because situations might change for you and they might change for the university you want to go to as well. It's quite hard to do that. It's quite complicated, but it's a really beneficial process. And obviously, as Catherine also said, there's a huge cohort of scholars. There's over 100 of us now, and they're all ready and here and are happy to help you with your application. So I would encourage you to go to the Monash website and look for someone in your field. I'm sure there's someone there who's done or doing the same thing you want to do, or has gone to the same place that you'd like to do your work as well. And write an email describing your passions and where you want Australia to be in the next 10 years and how excited you are to get there. And I'm sure you'll get a great response from one of the scholars. Contextually, I really would recommend, just as like a side point, I really think that you should think about how COVID has changed Australia and how the situations are ever emerging and we have to be more flexible now than ever before, and how opportunities to grow now exist where they didn't before in your particular field or sector. That's kind of all I wanted to say about like some tips and stuff, but just so you know that like the generic process is that you apply and then you get to go to an interview in your state, and then you get to go to an interview on the national platform as well. And really just enjoy the process. It's so much fun, and it's been a joy to be a Monash Scholar, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions, and I'll put my email here as well, so you can ask those as well. Or email later.
Thank you very much, Emma. I think you've excited everyone with those responses. We are a little bit over time, but so I'll just put 2 questions forward. And I noticed that Alex has already responded to one question as well. So there's one for Emma. When you were unsuccessful for the first time, what did you do for that year instead? Did you do another area of study or anything in particular to gain more experience?
Yeah, yep. I got a job as a park ranger, which had been my dream job for my entire life, and that really actually helped. I had a whole another year of experience and fun, and I used it as an opportunity to grow and learn more skills that were actually really helpful when I got to Oxford. So I would not take it as a setback at all. It's just take it as a dress rehearsal almost, and really take that year to learn from what you were told from your interview panelists, and try to do something fun, and don't feel too sad about it, but obviously you're allowed to feel a little bit sad about it.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there because we're about 7 minutes over time now. So thank you all again, and we look forward to people connecting with you. Okay, now moving on to the next session, which is about the new Colombo plan. So we're about 10 minutes late now, so I'll try to keep this one moving through fairly quickly. So I am the International Liaison Officer for Griffith University for the new Colombo Plan Scholarship Program. This is not the mobility program. It is the scholarship program, so I stress that to you all. So what is the program and what are the intended outcomes? Really, it's about increasing the number and diversity of Australian university undergraduates that go to the Indo-Pacific and gain experience and capabilities. It is about Australia's people-to-people skills and the relationships that we form in the Indo-Pacific area. There's a particular focus in the Indo-Pacific on the Pacific region as well, so that is something broader to think about as well. It also aims to connect students and alumni with leaders in government, business and civil society in the Indo-Pacific area. So that's the government goals. If we look at the actual program itself and what it is, it's an extremely prestigious scholarship. So it's for high-performing, high academic achieving performing students, very similar in many ways to Rhodes and Monash and Fulbright, in that you are asked by academic achievers, but also people who demonstrate ambassadorial and leadership skills in the future. So it looks for your extracurricular very clearly, and as Josh mentioned earlier, one of the things he did apply for New Colombo Plan but was weak in terms of his leadership area, and so we worked on developing those. So I do stress the need for that. Look, it provides unparalleled opportunities for you to develop your skills, your network, to build your connections, relationships, your experiences of working in the Indo-Pacific region as well. And we give out there are about 120 scholarships per year. So from the Griffith perspective, what are the eligibility criteria? You first of all must be nominated by the host institution, and we can only nominate 10 students per year, so that really isn't very many. So we have a panel that assesses those and shortlists and make a decision on those students that show the highest indicators of academic capabilities in addition to leadership. But more importantly, this is about agility and resilience. So other programs perhaps going to the UK might be a little bit easier, but for many Australians going to study in the Indo-Pacific in a very, very foreign environment, somewhere in, it could be Indonesia, it could be India, it could be Vietnam, is challenging. So we need to make sure that students are able to demonstrate that resilience, because it requires a lot of problem solving. So you must be enrolled in an Australian university currently and completing a component of the scholarship. Currently, you must be aged between 18 and 28. However, that is under review, but my understanding is that it's still in place for next year. You must have completed a minimum of 70 grade point average. Now that's about, some students it might be about a GPA of 5.8, but you do need to be strong academically as well, and not a previous recipient of a scholarship. However, you can have completed a mobility program. So key dates. Our internal application closes the 25th of May. So I encourage you to make sure you've done a number of things before you put in your application to optimise your chances of success. So we do get a lot of applications for that, and as I say, only 10 can be successful. So my tips to you are, first of all, make sure that you visit and make an appointment with Go Global, so that you understand about what partnerships that Griffith University has with universities in the Indo-Pacific area. The second thing you need to do is to discuss your application with your mentor and talk about your professional aspirations and how this might align with those, and potentially what connections they might have for internships and experiences overseas, or people that they might be able to connect you with. Discuss also your intention to apply with your program convener to make sure that you've got your faculty's support and that they will approve your credit. So these must be credit bearing. If you're to study over there, that's the key thing, that you must be able to do study overseas, and that must be able to be credited back to your degree program here. Once we have shortlisted you, then there are also the nominations will close the 21st of July. From the 12th of July to the 18th of August, nominated students must make their applications. That should be the 21st of July, not the 12th. So mid-September to the 1st of October, you will be advised if you've been shortlisted and you will be interviewed. Then the 22nd to the 21st of November, applicants will be notified of the outcome of your interview. Okay, so for more information, go to the DFAT website. Also have a look and follow on the Twitter and Instagram account, and there's also a Facebook that will keep you updated. They will have a live event coming up, and the date has not actually been confirmed for that, but it should be around about the 25th of July. It just still is to be confirmed. So I'm going to hand over now to Zach Look, who is also Griffith's New Colombo Plan and alumni ambassador, and he's going to share some of his experiences with you. Zach, are you ready?
Yes, hello. So to introduce myself, my name is Zachary Look. I've been a student of Government and International Relations since the start of 2016. And as Victoria mentioned, I'm also one of the alumni ambassadors for this year. So I'll be sharing my NCP journey with some references to the application stage and the actual overseas period. My New Colombo Plan journey started back in 2017 when I first applied as a second-year student. After being chosen as one of those 10 Griffith applicants, I proceeded to the interview stage, but unfortunately at this point my application was rejected. But I decided that getting the experience of overseas study and professional placements was more than worth delaying my graduation date and having another go. So I adjusted my course program, and that was with the help of the business school, my course convener, and then went about analysing where I went wrong in my first application. So NCP values experience and resilience, as this demonstrates to them that you'll have the ability to survive and hopefully thrive whilst overseas. I identified these qualities actually as my weaknesses. So to fix some of these shortcomings, to build my independence, my resilience and experience, I completed a 5-month internship in the US, and then I also traveled to Indonesia for a couple of weeks. But it should be noted that, of course, each of you will have different strengths and different experiences. So now in 2018, Griffith luckily selected me again as an applicant, and I reached the interview stage for the second time. And then in Canberra, I was able to now demonstrate the key attributes. So that's resilience, independence, and adaptability, in addition to a stronger connection to Indonesia. So my capacity for success was higher and my objectives were clearer. And that really helped me as an applicant and resulted in me finally being awarded the scholarship. So the key takeaways from this part of my story are that you must have a demonstrable and strong connection to your proposed host location. And also applicants need to be able to prove that they are resilient, independent, and adaptable. These attributes provide NCP with some assurance that you will be able to overcome any challenges that may arise whilst overseas. And from personal experience, they definitely do. So at the start of 2019, last year, I set off for Indonesia after attending a few days of group training in Canberra with the other scholars. The first few weeks saw me sort of questioning why I was actually there, what I was doing there, especially in a place that's so different from Australia. And this is where that resilience came in. But importantly, I wasn't alone. The New Colombo Plan Secretariat provides outstanding and comprehensive support. So my 12-month-long program that I had proposed at the application stage originally was to include 2 semesters of study in Indonesia at 2 different universities with 2 internships in between. So they really value those extended experiences with study and professional placement combinations. But for me, it ended up that 3 parts of my proposed program actually fell through, meaning I had to quickly scramble to pull something together, which was a bit of a stressful experience. But that's where the adaptability came in. So I was able to organize an internship in Thailand, which I got through the power of networking, actually at an event the year before. And for the second semester of study, I simply stayed at the same university as semester 1. And for the second internship, I changed this into full-time language study in Thailand. What was particularly amazing is that the New Colombo Plan allows and supports this level of flexibility, and they are really there to help. So despite the many challenges over my program, I got to have opportunities such as playing in a national hockey tournament in Jakarta, providing recommendations on democratic participation to the Thai Parliament, building my foreign language skills, and of course making an amazing network of friends and contacts along the way. And despite these challenges, I popped out the other side of this 12-month journey, which ended just in February. I ended up being a much stronger person with skills and experiences that are really highly valued by employers. So from this part of the story, I want to emphasize that studying and working overseas comes definitely with difficulties. But no matter the obstacles, the New Colombo Plan Secretariat provides the support and flexibility for you to succeed no matter your personal situation. So please definitely find out more about the New Colombo Plan, and I'm definitely here to help answer any of those questions or any concerns that you might have, both in my capacity as just an alumni and also as an alumni ambassador. So I'll pass over to Grace Manahan now, which will hopefully tell us more about her experience and maybe answer some questions that you might be having already.
Thanks, Zach. Can I just confirm again that everyone can hear me? Okay, fantastic. All right, so being the last person of the night from the scholar experiences before the panel, I'll try and keep it quite brief. As Zach said, I'm one of the alumni ambassadors for Griffith, and I am a New Colombo Plan scholar who received the award in 2018. And prior to that, I'd actually done a mobility program in 2017. So that answers the question straight away. Yes, you can do a mobility and a scholarship program. You just can't do them at the same time. So my degree is in law and government and international relations. I applied for the scholarship in my second year and went for 18 months over my third and fourth. I'm now in my fifth year. I went to Singapore and I worked with King & Wood Mallisons, which is an international law firm headquartered in Hong Kong. Excuse me, in Hong Kong. And I also interned with PwC in a consulting role. So to answer the questions about how to choose your country and how to choose your institution, you have a lot of flexibility with the New Colombo Plan, because essentially you can look at the criteria for the scholarship and the eligibility and what you can do, and then you can shape it to what you want it to be. So for me, I chose Singapore because I had an interest in international arbitration and finance and sort of commercial specialized subjects that the National University of Singapore offered at a master's level that undergraduates could take. So that was a big motivator for me for choosing Singapore and for choosing the National University. I do note, however, that NUS isn't partnered with Griffith. So when you're choosing your country and your university, these are things to take into account. Are you going to be going to a country that has a partnership, or are you going to be going as a non-graduating, non-exchange student? There's a lot of technicalities, and it's just a matter of putting aside time to understand what you can and can't do, and making sure that you get in touch with Global Mobility, because they're going to be the people who you can take those questions to. So those considerations, such as, you know, what you want to get out of your experience. Is it that a particular country has an area of strategic relationships with Australia that needs development? So people have been talking about Pacific Islands in particular and climate change, and maybe looking at some of the things that are happening on a higher political level and how you can contribute to that. Or are you just wanting to hone your craft, your degree and your discipline? So you need to have quite a clear understanding of what you want to achieve. But where I see students fall short in their draft applications is not being able to then switch that and say, well, how can I contribute to the Australian government's goals? So people should really have read white papers, strategic papers, having an understanding of where Australia sits in the region in relation to the countries that you're looking at. And certainly you can go to a number of countries on your program. You're not limited to just one. Obviously, you need to have high academics, leadership, resilience, and these things, as other scholarship recipients have touched on, you could flash out by doing a mind map, chatting to other people, really getting everything down in front of you and working on it over time. But you really do need to think not just what you can achieve from the scholarship, but how you can give back. So I think by chatting with people who have gone to a country in the Indo-Pacific, that will be one way to see how they have achieved that and how they communicated that to the panel. And certainly Zach and I will be here to take any questions and have chats. That's ultimately our role as alumni ambassadors. So we'll have our contact details here available. So I'll hand back over now to Victoria.
Okay, so there's a number of questions that have been asked specifically to the new Colombo Plan program. So this is the one which is for undergraduate studies, so it's different to the others that we have been exploring so far. Do first-year students have the opportunity to engage with the new Colombo Plan program? The scholarship program we're talking about, not the mobility program. Of course, the mobility program, yes, but first-year students can certainly apply for a new Colombo Plan scholarship. So yes, in answer to your question, is the process for choosing our host country, or what is the process for choosing a host country and institution? Look, I think that that's a process, it's an iterative process. I certainly work with students to talk about which countries would be suitable, but you also need, as Grace has pointed out, to go and see, Go Global or our mobility team, and they will be able to assist you with that. Now, there's a difference between where you study. You can also do an internship elsewhere, but you do need to have one place where you spend the predominant amount of your time there. So you can potentially do an internship in a different country, and so they are really encouraging people to go to the Pacific region countries as well. And so if you're thinking about that, it may be that we don't have a partnership with the university there where you'd be able to get credit towards your degree. So that is something to be considered, but again, it really is research and putting a very strong proposal together about where you need to go and why you need to go. The institution, you do have to be able to do your study in English or be fluent in the language if it's not English. Okay, so can you go for 1 or 2 years? The maximum you can go is 19 months, and there's no extension on that, 19 years. So do scholars study and work overseas individually in the country or with other scholars? It's individual, so but you'd be in the country. So the idea of the scholarship is, of course, that you have really an immersion program, and that's why they want you to study in the host country and not go to a university which might be an Australian university position in country. So, for example, RMIT has a number of universities which have satellite campuses overseas, and you're not encouraged to study those universities, because the idea is really to connect with people in country and make those connections. Parts in one country, another, yes, in answer to that. Okay, so we might move over from that, and if you have any further questions, Grace and Zach are very, very happy to answer any questions for you. They are our ambassadors, and that's part of their role to connect, and they're wonderful. So we will be having a further follow-up session that they're both organising, which we'll probably do through Teams, or we could do it through Blackboard Collaborate, and Grace and Zach will organise those times at a later stage for you. Okay, so if we can move across now to the next session. I want to just briefly mention that there are quite a number of other scholarship programs. So there's the Cambridge Australia Scholarship, and so Ethan Bowering, who is on our panel coming up next, was actually a recipient of that scholarship as well. So we just can't cover all of these scholarships, but I want to encourage you to be aware of those. There's also the Gates Cambridge Scholarship program as well. Again, if you can have a look at those sessions. So one of our recipients, you might know Caitlin Hillman, and she this year was a Schwartzman Scholars recipient, and so she'll be going to China in the second part of this year is the intention. And Caitlin's very happy to talk with people about that scholarship program. We have a booklet that we're sharing with you, and the booklet will also have details about these scholarships. One other one, which I haven't included in that, is a Ramsay Scholarship. It's a brand new one for 2021, and you can go, like Monash, you can go to any university. Okay, so now what I would like to do is to come across to our panel for the final session. We are running around about 10 minutes late, but to those who are just joining us again, we welcome you for the final session. And this session is focused on how do you write a really powerful application. And so I bring to this session Professor Haig Padapan, and as you'll see from the slide here, he was a Fulbright Senior Scholar in 2014. Jana Merlin, many of you might know Jana if you've been involved in the New Colombo Plan. Jana has been supporting us with how to write really a powerful personal statement. How do you write those influential opening paragraphs? And she's going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward. Then Ethan, and Ethan was a 2015 Cambridge, Australia scholarship recipient. But Ethan is also on the panel, on the Victorian panel, my understanding is, and he is reviewing applications for the Victorian shortlisting of those. So this session is going to go ahead with me asking a couple of questions and asking the panel to respond to those questions. We're going to move across hopefully to the their video so that they can respond. Okay. And so, Haig, writing a persuasive application is challenging, and we all understand how difficult this is. But I'm wondering what you see are the key things people can do to improve their application.
Firstly, thank you, Victoria, for inviting me, and hello to my colleagues, Ethan and Jana. If I can just start, I'm hoping everyone can hear me. I think the overarching observation I would make is that your application should be authentic. And that sounds obvious, but it's not always easy to be authentic. You know, the line about if you can trick people into being authentic, then you've got it made. So what do I mean by being authentic? I just wanted to mention 3 different ways you can show the authenticity of your application. The first one is by considering why this grant. And if you don't mind, my comments will be about Fulbright, but obviously they apply across the board. Why are you applying for this grant? So the fallback position might be because I want it on my CV, or because I'd like to go to the US in the case of Fulbright, or the others elsewhere. But clearly that's not going to work. It's not an adequate answer. So you need to have an authentic reason why you're going to those places. I find this problem emerges when I review applications and people say, I want to go to this university because it is the best in a university in America, and American universities are very good and so on, which is not very persuasive because there are lots of good universities in the whole world, and there are some really good ones, of course, in Australia as well. So I think you need a really good answer for that, an authentic answer, and something that's authentic could be, this university does something no one else does in the world, or I've collaborated with someone in this university and I want to collaborate further. This seems to me to be a persuasive, authentic answer as to why that place and not, I just want a holiday in the US. Moving quickly on to the second point, I suppose I would start this with why me? In other words, why you? I think the secret hidden response might be because it will advance my career, and I want to have a brilliant career. That may be what you're thinking, but it's probably not what you really ought to put down on the application. So here it strikes me again that a genuine answer would be that you want to make a larger contribution beyond simply advancing your career, which everyone will accept will happen, but you need to show something else. So very briefly, that something else could be a major contribution to the world of ideas, whatever it may be, or it could be a contribution to the world of practice. You may have discovered something, some practical institutional innovation, some technology, whatever that you want to develop more in the US or some other country. And that next iteration would be the larger public spirited contribution. And finally, authenticity in terms of so what? I mean, why are you doing this? What will happen to you afterwards? I think that's a very important question, and applicants will want to, I think about it not just in terms of the next shiny thing, I've got this, I'm going to the next grant application, don't worry about this. You need to demonstrate to the committee the contribution you will make to the place you're going to and the contribution you will make to Australia when you come back. And I think Zach and others were talking about this. So in terms of contribution to the host country, you would want to show how your insights will contribute to colleagues over there, and you're going to develop new collaborative framework while there. For Australia, obviously, you're going to be a good ambassador, so you represent Australia in those other countries, and you will bring back new insights and new colleagues and collaborative networks that you will deploy here. So those are just very practical examples of how you can be, as it were, authentic beyond simply self-serving, as in, this is really good for me. I want a holiday in America, and I want to move on after that. So thank you for that.
Ethan, did you want to respond as well?
Yeah, I think I sort of echo the issue of authenticity. I think a bit authenticity in slightly a different way. I think it's a balance between writing what you think the panel or the applicant reviewers want to hear, and also sort of being yourself. I think, you know, you don't want to make stuff up, but also you want to sort of stand out. And I do think people should, you know, lean in, as I think a few other people have talked about, you know, lean into their failures, lean into their struggles, and be really upfront on the journey to where they are now and how this scholarship will allow them to sort of go on their journey into the future.
Great, thanks for that, Ethan. Jana, what about you? Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, similarly, the authenticity is really key, but I do think that there needs to be a combination of that plus articulation. So you need to be able to actually express it very well and professionally. And often people will lean too far to the personal side, and it can get sometimes a little bit awkward when you're reading it. So you need to be able to find that balance between professionalism and personal, and be able to express yourself very well. So my recommendation is just get as many people to read it as possible and ask them to be critical. And yet, you know, my motto is there's always something that can be done better when you're writing. So getting as many people to read it is never a negative. There's always going to be something to be found that can be improved upon. So just get as many people to read it as possible and make sure everything makes sense and is as simple as possible.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something to that myself too. And I think that talking to as many people as possible is also important. So getting them to read it, it needs to become just part of who you are. So you need to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it so that your story or your narrative becomes so very clear to you. And through refining it, through those conversations, you will find that slowly it emerges. And so if people aren't understanding really, you know, why you want to do it or what compels you, then it's not going to come through written either. So talking about it as much as you can is really critical. We go on to the next question now, which is for you, Ethan. So scholarships focus on future leaders. However, evidencing leadership capabilities can be really challenging. So do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. So I have read lots of applications of people just list all the stuff they've done, and you know, although a list is impressive, it's really hard to compare students or actually know what people are involved. So I always recommend trying to take a step back and think about, what does leadership mean to you? Or if the selection criteria is about ethical leadership, what does ethical leadership mean to you? And start off your discussion about your leadership qualities with a sort of high-level overview of what you think leadership is, how you've approached it. Are you a lead from the front? Are you a lead from behind? You know, what has driven you to be a leader? And then go through your achievements. You know, you want to, often you're short on words, so sometimes it is appropriate to list things, but I do think trying to include one or two examples where you have drawn out a particular problem or why you think your particular you as an individual or your style of leadership has helped overcome a problem or bring a group together or made a bigger contribution can be really compelling and sort of leave the memory in the panel's mind rather than just being another person who's got another list of achievements. And unfortunately, sometimes all those things can sort of blur into one when you're viewing things back to back.
Jana, would you like to respond to that at all about leadership?
Yeah, so for me, I think that leadership section is often the one where people get caught up a little bit because they're not sure what is leadership. Is it a part-time job where I maybe managed one person? Is it being a past leader? Is it, you know, it could be a range of different things, and it really depends on how you articulate what you did. So I think for many people will have a lot of examples of leadership and they may just not realize that what you should do is actually, in my mind, think of your application. What are you trying to achieve in your application? Where are your gaps? And do you have any leadership examples that can fill those gaps? You want everything that you include to contribute to the strength of your application. So yeah, if there's an opportunity to say, like Ethan said, you know, this is the style of leadership I have, and I gained it through this experience at this time, blah, blah, blah. That's a really good opportunity to tick that box, demonstrate that, then move on. I think people maybe overthink it a little bit. Just say what you did, explain the leadership components to it and the skills you gain from it, and where possible, link it back to your program as often as possible. So yeah, that would be it.
Hag, over to you from perhaps a different perspective, which is to do with fellowships and people in senior leadership roles.
Yeah, look, I'd like to endorse both the previous statements that were really helpful. It seems to me that the first important thing is the context in which the leadership claim is being made, which was Jana's point. I think that's absolutely right. So what sort of leadership do you want to demonstrate in the context of your application, as opposed to an abstract principle? That is a very important distinction to be made. And having done that, because that will determine how much or how little you need to make of that point. The second point, which was Ethan's, is very well made too. So you need to do both things. You need to outline the principle and the demonstration of the principle. And often we do one and not the other. So we do a whole list of demonstrations, but not show why we're doing that, or we do the principles without any evidence. And if you don't have any evidence, then people don't know what have those, you've applied those things, or you can demonstrate those things. So you need to have an organic account of both those things, but modified in the context of the larger application, so it doesn't look like a template. Thanks, Victoria.
Victoria, can I just add to what Haig said? Because I think it's really important in terms of have evidence. I do find that a lot when people are writing their applications. They will say, I gained skills and experience from this experience, but they don't say what they were. So it's really, you don't learn anything from that line. So you need to be a bit more specific about what skills you did gain from the experience.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that so people have a sense of what you're talking about, Jana? Putting you on the spot, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was looking through applications today, and literally that someone will explain, okay, I had a leadership role. Let's just say it was passed, because lots of people do use the peer-assisted study session leader as an example of leadership. And they will say, I gained many skills and experience from that, but they don't say, you know, I learned how to manage a classroom. I learned how to plan a lesson. I learned how to deal with, I don't know, if conflict comes up. I was never a past leader, but they're not specific in the skills that they actually learned and the leadership, how they demonstrated leadership.
I think also another thing I've observed with reading people's applications, particularly for New Colombo Plan, in terms of leadership, often it's not what you're doing, it's communicating what are you doing that is different from other people too, and that can be a strength. So with the pass role, I see that quite a lot, and one of the things I would comment is, would you say that a lecturer was a leader or a tutor was a leader just because they have that role. And that's the way you need to think about it. It's about the leaderly actions that people take within a role, and in what way can you demonstrate that you have taken others on with past a learning journey. So what has been the impact? And I think that that's the really critical thing that is often really missing. So PASS is a great example, but it's a really underutilised example where people just don't unpack what those experiences have been and evidencing that. So that would be my feedback about PASS as well. So thank you. Ethan, did you have a comment you wanted to make about that as well?
I was just thinking, you know, when I've approached things like this, I've often said like my learning, so my bigger picture and linking that back to leadership. So I often use the example of, you know, volunteering in East Timor, and through this situation, I learned that, you know, a leader doesn't always have to be the showy person at the front, and that you can create a lot of change in a team. And so you sort of, you know, draw that in, and then that to me influences how I want to be a leader in the future. Like my goal isn't, you know, to be Prime Minister, it is to do X, Y, and Z, and I've learned that you can still create change this way, and that's why this program will allow me to gain these skills to do that. So I think linking all these bits together, which, you know, Jana and Haig have talked about, is sort of, you know, really important.
That's great. And I think another thing that I would just like to add is that it is also quite culturally based. So it is a values and a culture. So you need to think about your background and what matters to you. And leadership is very, very much connected in with who you are, your identity. And as Ethan said earlier, it's about, you know, what models, what way do you like to lead? So that is part of that narrative as well. So I'm going to move on now to the final question, which is one for Jana to take a lead with. So Jana, what do you feel makes a compelling personal statement? I know with most scholarship applications, they really ask for a personal statement or that opening statement about why.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think I could actually talk about this for an hour or more. So I'm going to try and cut it down as much as possible. So ultimately, what you want in a personal statement is to engage the reader enough that they want to read the rest of your application. So typically, the personal statement will be the very first long form response that they read. So you have the opportunity to engage them or disengage them. And so you really want to take the opportunity to get their attention. So there are a lot of things you can do in terms of writing style and structure, but there are three overarching things that I do think if you do apply them, you will have the foundation for a very good personal statement. So the first one is narrative. So you want to build a narrative from the start of your personal statement and maintain it through to the very end. So the narrative kind of provides the backbone. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it before, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand what it actually looks like, but essentially it's a backbone to the application, and it gives you an opportunity to bring the whole application together. It ties this consistent thread throughout the application, and it gives it, when you have a good narrative, it actually makes it a lot more enjoyable to read. So you'll get the reader's attention and hopefully keep it. Now, the narrative should be directly related to your area of research and should, if possible, demonstrate that you do have a long-standing interest in the area, a depth of knowledge, or both. And I did send through a slide, if you have it there, Victoria, just to demonstrate what I mean by narrative. I'm not sure if you can put that up.
I'll just ask Kim if she could hand back over to the screen.
That's okay. I'll just keep talking, and then when it comes up, I'll explain it. Here we go. So this is actually, I pulled it out of my application when I did the Prime Minister's Award. So my application was centered on disaster management, and I went to Vietnam. So I wanted to tie that throughout the application. And you can see here in the very first example, I've just touched on the Mekong Delta, natural disasters. It's an important place to be. Then in the next answer, in the next paragraph, sorry, that was related to academic achievement. So I got a internship in the United States based on academic merit. So, and then I was able to go to some briefings on the Hurricane Sandy relief bill. So that tied that in nicely. And then the next one was in leadership, and I was able to go to the G20 Youth Summit, and I was able to talk to a lot of people from a lot of different cultures, and learn about how different policies are passed and how legislation is built, I guess, or things are debated. And then finally, I tied it to the overarching goals of the Prime Minister's Award. And you can see there that, of course, natural disasters are in everyone's interest in the region, so that wasn't very difficult. But you can see there, so you can get rid of that now. Oh, keep it up, actually. You can see there that those sentences don't flow on from each other if you put them all together, but they allow you to see this theme throughout, and it makes it very easy for me to then make an argument for why I want to study natural disasters in Vietnam, why I want to go there, and I show this real interest in it, a real passion for it, and it gives that authenticity that this is actually an area of interest that I've had for a long time. It's tied into everything that I've done, and it's likely to tie into things that I do in the future. And so I do think that is very important, to tie things to the future as well as the past, because they want to see that you use your scholarship experience to actually better your future outcomes as well. So make sure in that opening statement or your personal statement, you do also talk about your career goals, and tie that to your program as well. Okay, I'll quickly move on because we're running out of time. The second thing I think is really important is make sure that you demonstrate, you give confidence to the reader that you're capable of delivering on the things you say you're going to deliver. Now, because the personal statement comes before academic achievement and leadership, the way to do that in this area, like Haig talked about, is provide justification for your choices. So exactly like Haig talked about, for me, I think it's much more powerful to say, I want to study under Professor Brown, who is a pioneer of this method at this university, instead of saying, I want to study at this university because it's the #1 university in the country. For some people, that may be the only justification they can have, being a #1 university, but if you have the opportunity to go deeper, you should, because it just gives that feel of you're really serious about this, you've done your research, you've made this decision for a specific reason. Yeah, and you're really serious about it. So then by the end of the personal statement, you want the reader to know what you plan to do, how you will do it, when you will do it, and why it's important. So they're the key things you want to get across in that personal statement. And just finally, be professional. I talked about it a little bit before. I've seen many applications come through where people try to insert a bit of a casual tone to give a more personalized vibe to the application, but I think it actually detracts. So you are applying for a prestigious scholarship, so you want to show throughout the statement and the application that you're professional and capable of representing whatever program it is you're applying for, and also your country ultimately. And just on a side note to that, don't overshare personal information. So only share what you would want a business colleague or a professor to know about you. You can of course discuss any hardships or personal challenges because they may have impacted your decisions to take on this topic, but just keep it to what is necessary to get your message across and why it's relevant to your application. So I'll just stop there and then we'll see what questions we have.
Okay, we don't seem to have any particular questions that are remaining, but one of the things that I was going to say, sorry?
I just wanted to jump in with a couple of pitfalls, if that's all right, Victoria.
Yes, please.
So I think, yeah, having spent the weekend reviewing applications, I know a lot of people put a lot of time into application, but a really important thing that I think people underestimate is the importance of references. And so I saw some really great applications, and then their reference was like a third of a page and really didn't say much more than what was on their academic transcript. And so I know sometimes it's really hard to find referees that can talk to you, but I really would encourage you to take the time to sit down with them, to offer to look at a draft, to talk through the things you want them to get across, and look to make the most of the opportunity that they get, because there's often not a word limit on references, to talk about things beyond your academic, to talk about, work experience or your drive, or, how they think you're gonna, whether they think your plans are credible. I think it really gives some sort of weight to your application. The only other thing I want to mention is sometimes I think, when we're looking at limited words, I think sometimes we spend too much time talking about our academic achievement, think if you've got a really strong GPA, often the transcript will sort of, you know, tell everything you need to say, or you can talk about your main achievements or get your references to talk about it. If you've only got 600 words, you spend 300 of it talking about academic achievement, and there's, you know, 3 or 4 other criteria, you're really missing out on the opportunity to talk about your, you know, community engagement or leadership or drive or career plans. And I just think, you know, make sure that you're really ticking all the boxes.
I'm wondering whether you would be able to give us any insights, Ethan, about referees as well. As you've been evaluating, you mentioned over the last weekend applications. Do you have any feedback on referees?
Yeah, so I think someone that probably has known you for more than one semester, or someone who is, you know, relatively senior within the program. So if you've got someone who is, you know, a convener for your degree, or is a senior researcher, or someone has a bit of, you know, I suppose weight to, you know, if they say, you know, Victoria is the best student I've seen in 20 years, or Victoria is a standout in their year because of X, Y, and Z, or I'm really confident that Victoria is going to go on and achieve it for these reasons. So someone who can talk to you and your personality and your drive and your achievements beyond just Victoria got 98% in the one course that I taught them in, because, you know, I can see that from your transcript and your GPA, and I sort of want to, it's really hard when you're reviewing everyone's transcripts. Everyone can come in with a GPA of, you know, 6.8 or 6.9 or 6.5 or whatever, but I'm trying to go, what does that actually mean? Is this person solely about academics, or have they made a greater contribution to their school, to their field? How do they engage? So I'm trying to sort of dig a little bit past just how many high distinctions or distinctions you get. Does that answer your question?
Yep, it does. And another one, I think that's probably will be a lot of people burning questions about preparing for an interview. So does anyone have any suggestions about preparing for an interview?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first, having worked with New Colombo applicants last year. So I think practice. Similar to, you know, Jenna and Haig's advice about you can't have too many people with your application. You really can't talk about your narrative to too many people. You want it to sound authentic. You don't want to sound like you're just ticking boxes as you try to talk through your area. I often prepare by like drawing a big mud map and have, you know, sort of different boxes and bubbles to sort of link my narrative together, but also being like, okay, so ethical leadership, here are all the different examples and things that I can use to talk about ethical leadership, because you sort of don't know how the question is going to be phrased, and it's really good to have different examples to draw onto. Often I answer a question being like, you know, thanks for the question. You know, as you can see in my application, I've demonstrated leadership across a vast array, including, you know, a past leader, as an editor of a magazine, running this NGO and blah, blah, blah. But I really think that, you know, my idea of, you know, leading from behind is really exhibited from X, Y, and Z. So in some ways, it is sort of like applying for a job interview where you want to give a sort of light sprinkling of all your achievements, but really go into detail about one sort of thing, and having that sort of mud map in front of you does help you feel confident that, you know, you've done your preparation, you're not going to be sort of startled by something.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Ethan. I'm going to have to wrap it up now. So thank you to Haig and Jana for your generosity and all of the information you've shared. I feel confident it's been invaluable. So similarly, thank you to everyone who's attended this session, as well as all of the people who were from the scholarships and our alumni. For everyone else, I just want to let you know that we will have the presentation, the MP4 available. So you have shared your email address, and Kim will be sending through the connections to that tomorrow, the links to that tomorrow. However, if you search for our prestigious scholarship information webpage, you'll find that information there. We are also creating a scholarship information booklet. So some people have asked us about age-specific scholarships. It will be detailed there. I also recommend you subscribe to the individual scholarship organisations, because they are running webinars. They do have their Facebook groups. There's a lot of information there, which obviously we can't provide. The other thing is if you're planning to apply, please connect with us, with the Honours College, and we can put you in touch with our Griffith University network who can provide assistance with you, even if it's just to be listening. But research is the thing I think that probably comes across most strongly with all of them. So thank you very much again for attending, and all the best. We look forward to seeing you in the future. Goodbye.